Is the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Public Services for the Bahamas. Welcome.
So thank you very much. Good morning. I want to say that I didn't expect that, but it was really inspiring to hear that, because that was going to be the starting point for me. And given that we're really talking to business people this morning, mainly, I thought, well, maybe I'm in a misplaced audience. But I went to a college in Ohio, which is, that was in the 70s, 70 to 74, which is about 10 miles to the east of Springfield, Ohio. And there's another university about 7 or 8 miles farther east called Central State University. And I started there because the college was called, or is called, Antioch College. My high school teacher, I went to a Benedictine school in Nassau. She was from Long Island, New York, and said, Antioch's the place you need to go. It was quite attractive because they didn't have exams, so that was one reason. So anyway, I got to Antioch, Yellow Springs. That's also the place where Dave Chappelle is from, by the way. And his father, Bill, was just as funny as him in class. But Horace Mann, who founded that university, there's often a quote associated with him, and he said this: "Be ashamed to die until you've done something for humanity. Be ashamed to die unless you've done something for humanity." And the other thing I like to refer to is if you go online, you will find Carl Sagan doing a description of a picture of the Earth far away in the universe, the black space. And it's a dot, tiny dot. And he says, there are no borders, no boundaries, no differences, nothing. That's all we have. And that we all have to dedicate ourselves to working toward getting together on this one place, which is our home. And I think that that is something we ought to keep in mind. The other thing is Neil deGrasse Tyson, who says, the one thing about science is, whether you believe it or not, it's true. Okay, so that's the kind of setting I'd like to start off with. And I mentioned Springfield, Ohio, and the Bahamians, who are the Haitian community, as you know, has become the center of some discussion in the politics of this country as it faces a general election. And in another aspect of the campaign, one of the aspirants for office said that he would flatten the Bahamas. So we got involved in the domestic theater. And I say all of those things again because at the basis of what a country like the Bahamas has to argue, as a small country, is moral suasion. We have no other argument that we had than, as Pope John Paul II used to say, we all have a right to exist. We have a right to our culture, to our identity, our survival, whether we are rich or poor, powerful or weak. We all have a right to be here. And that's the basis upon which I have launched and based my political life, and which I urge upon you in the business community. And that's why I found your introduction so compelling, because that's a good basis upon which to start. And moving forward, what was interesting about this particular UN session and the margins of the things that happened in this particular session was the bringing together of people like yourselves who are able to engage the market in trying to solve a problem which thus far, moral suasion has not been so compelling. And this is the second opportunity that I've had as a foreign minister, because normally I'm not surrounded by CEOs, but rather diplomats, as opposed to dividends. So it's a good opportunity for me to help make that case. And therefore, again, I say, I'm really pleased that we start at the moral foundation, because that's the most compelling argument. When it comes to tackling climate change, we need everyone at the table, especially those who can turn good intentions into impactful investments. In Shakespeare's Tempest, the character Prospero famously declares, "What's past is prologue." And I also add here, when Cassius was trying to persuade Brutus to join him, he describes Caesar, and he says he remembers Caesar being in the ocean and said, "Help me, Cassius, ere I sink." And that's us. The water is rising, and we're saying to the world, help us, because we're sinking. When it comes to climate change, the past is also a warning. We've seen the devastation that inaction can bring. The question is, what story will we write for the future? Imagine two possible futures. Rising sea levels swallow our coastlines, extreme weather cripples our economies, and the vibrant culture of island nations like mine fade into memory. In other words, in the other scenario, we harness the power of innovation, invest in sustainable solutions, and unleash the creative potential of our people to build a more resilient world. The choice is ours, and the time to choose is now. Now, while the Bahamas boasts breathtaking natural beauty, our reality can be illustrated by the numbers. As a nation of 700 islands and 3,000 atolls and keys, we are on the front lines of climate change, experiencing its effects not as an abstract projection, but as a quantifiable reality. When I spoke to the Explorers Club last year, they presented a slide, and the slide shows that if we do nothing, by the year 2070, the island on which our capital city sits will be 30% underwater. If we do nothing again by 2100, it will be 70% underwater. So that's why our Prime Minister seeks to argue around the world that climate change for the Bahamas is existential. 5 years ago this month, the Category 5 Hurricane Dorian devastated the Bahamas. The statistics are sobering. $3.4 billion in damages, over 70,000 people displaced, and a recovery process that exists today. But this is not just our fight. The climate crisis knows no borders. What impacts us today will eventually impact us all. Rising sea levels, extreme weather events, and ecosystem collapse threaten the very fabric of our interconnected world. So the Bahamas is taking proactive steps to mitigate climate change and build resilience. We're pioneering innovative financial instruments like blue and green bonds to fund the climate action and protect our marine ecosystems. We're also investing in nature-based solutions, recognizing the economic and ecological value of our natural assets. Our mangrove restoration projects, for instance, not only enhance the coastal protections, but also create jobs and support local communities. Beyond our traditional industries, we are actively cultivating the orange economy. This dynamic sector encompasses a wealth of opportunities, from developing world-class music and film production studios powered by renewable energy, to fostering a thriving ecosystem of digital artists and designers creating immersive cultural experiences. So imagine, not only will tourists come to the beaches engaging in that, but our rich musical heritage through interactive exhibits, or taking home a piece of Bahamian culture through sustainability, crafted fashion and design, or watching a locally directed and produced film in the footsteps of Sidney Poitier, my good friend of blessed memory. This is where I get to talk about soft power. Soft power is not an invention of mine. Joe Nye, who used to be dean at the Kennedy School at Harvard, wrote a book about soft power. It's one of the things we in the Bahamas admire about Jamaica, because all you have to do is say Bob Marley, and everybody knows what country you're talking about. I often tell the story of meeting some children in South Africa. And they asked me where I was from, and I said the Bahamas. They couldn't quite figure out where that was. So I danced around a few nations and finally landed on Jamaica. I said, oh yeah, they know where Jamaica is. And then they asked me if I knew Shabba Ranks. I said, I heard of him, but I've never met him. But that's soft power. And that's what Bahamas thinks helps us as well. So this orange economy is about leveraging our creativity and talent to build a more resilient and diversified economy for generations to come. One of the things we're working on now is to bring our cultural festival called Junkanoo to Broadway. And next year we'll be doing a test market in a theater in Olney near Washington, D.C. to test on the communities there whether or not there's an appetite for a full-fledged show which we can take to Broadway. And we hope by marking that out in these markets that this will connect to the Bahamas and people will come to experience our culture. And so it's not just about economic growth, but about the social impact. By investing in our creative industries, we're empowering our young people, preserving our cultural heritage, and equipping our citizens with the skills to thrive in the global economy. We have a number of consulates across the U.S., and there's one in Atlanta, one in Houston, one in Los Angeles, one in Denver, one in Detroit, one in Chicago, one here in New York, one in Miami. And there's a reason why they're there, because the consulates are mainly responsible for dealing with the affairs of the diaspora. Now, I mention them because the reason there are aggregations of Bahamians who live there have to do with the fact that many of them went to school in this country and simply settled in the United States. And it's a question that was asked me when I was at Antioch. Why are you going back home? And I said, I don't want to live in the United States. I want to go back home to contribute to building up the Bahamas. And I've been modestly successful. But I'm not worried so much about people leaving, because one of the things that every Bahamian is taught, and Sidney Poitier being the obvious example, is that whatever successes you have a moral obligation to reach back and help those who are left behind or who are at home. And all of this, I think every Bahamian citizen has adopted that as a mantra. So our young people are important to the development of all that we say and do. Even as we cultivate these vibrant industries, we cannot escape the stark reality, though, of the climate crisis. The very beauty and cultural richness that fuels our creative sector are threatened by rising sea levels and increasingly frequent extreme weather events. This is not a choice between economic development and environmental protection. It is an understanding that our future prosperity depends on a healthy planet. And I just had a lesson in green bonds and seagrass and the spread across the seas of the Bahamas. I'm advised we have the largest aggregation of seagrass, concentration of seagrass anywhere in the world. And you know that we are now seeking to market these across the world. And some in this room today are responsible for helping us to monetize that to help save our country. And that's why I think this is also valuable to reinforce our thanks to those for the use of the market to help solve this problem. It's not just a question of hands being out for charity, but this is marketable, and the market can help to save and solve the problem. The investments made in the Bahamas, whether in renewable energy, resilient infrastructure, or our burgeoning orange economy, are not just good for business, they're an investment in a future where both our cultures and coastlines can thrive. The private sector has a critical role to play in scaling up these efforts. I urge you to view the challenges facing SIDS not as an insurmountable obstacle, and I'll do this because there's so many acronyms around the UN, small island developing states, but as opportunities for innovation and responsible investment. So today I ask you two things. First, direct your investments toward a sustainable future. Consider the long-term economic and social benefits of investing in climate-resilient infrastructure, renewable energy, and the creative sector in the Bahamas and other SIDS. Second, forge strategic partnerships with small island states. Become partners in progress. Share your expertise, technology, and resources to create solutions that benefit us all. The challenges are real, but so too is our collective power to overcome them. Let us seize this moment, not with rhetoric, but concrete results and measurable results. Concrete action. And I end where I began, quoting Horace Mann, "Be ashamed to die unless you've done something to save and help humanity." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this incredible keynote, the important work that you're doing. We are so delighted to have you here with your delegation and shining light on what is happening there.